Lost Girls began as a serialized comic in the 5th issue of the adult periodical Taboo in 1991. Most of the strips in Taboo were horror and were illustrated in this sort of edgy, monochromatic style by S. Clay Wilson, Steve Bissett. But your strip with Melinda was far more, full colour in a fully illustrated style. I mean, was that a conscious attempt to do something different to the rest of the content, or did the publishers approach you with they wanted that kind of material?
Well, I think that what happened, as far as I can remember, the early days of Taboo, Steve Bissett was getting a anthology magazine together, and I'd done a little story with Bill Ray, who I believe did a lot of work on Ren and Stimpy, from what I hear. But I'd done one for the first issue, and then when I was thinking about From Hell with Eddie Campbell, we decided to serialise that, starting from I think the second issue or something like that.
Yeah.
And when I began to think about doing work with Melinda, this was it was actually not connected with Taboo. There was another publication that was supposed to be coming out over here that was called, I think, Lost Horizons of Shangri-La.
Okay.
And was supposed to be an erotic anthology.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd approached both me and Melinda separately to do an 8-page piece for it. And Melinda had been writing and drawing her own work for years over there on the West Coast.
Right.
But I am a bit like a Dalek in that I am immensely powerful but can't really go upstairs. It's sort of, I have to have an artist that I can work like a glove puppet.
Yeah.
And sort of in order to get anything done in comics. But I'd wanted to use Melinda as an artist because I'd been a huge fan of hers for decades. And Neil Gaiman, I think, put us in touch with each other. And she came up to Northampton for a couple of weekends, and we were just talking about what we did and did not want to do with erotic comics. I mean, once I'd seen Melinda's colour artwork, which I hadn't seen before that point, I realised that this had probably got to be in colour. We started to knock ideas back and forward, and when we arrived at the idea of Dorothy, Wendy and Alice, we realised that this was probably going to be a much bigger story than the 8 or 16 page original inclusion in this anthology, which fell by the wayside anyway.
Yeah.
But by that time I started to think that, Taboo is the title of Steve Bissett's magazine, and after talking to him at that time, he said that he'd meant that to be all inclusive.
And not just horror.
Not just horror. So I thought, well, why don't we try putting Lost Girls in there as a stark contrast. And we ran it in there for 3 or 4 episodes, I can't really remember now.
I think it was 5 chapters over 3 issues.
And it took us, we went through 3 publishers in the course, at least 3, in the course of doing Lost Girls. They were just dropping like flies all around us. This wasn't a direct cause and effect relationship with them publishing Lost Girls. It was forces in the industry, things like that. But we had an awful lot of publishers just kind of collapse under us.
Right.
And for a number of years it was me financing the continuation on it, just because it was something that had to be finished, and that situation went on. I knew that somebody would pick it up eventually, because it was looking like such a wonderful piece of work. And but then Chris Staros stepped admirably into the breach, and it's been relatively plain sailing ever since.
Brilliant. Well, the things, if Taboo had continued indefinitely, and you'd done a couple of chapters, say, every 6 months, it would have taken about 7.5 years to produce the whole comic. But in fact, it's taken twice that long. Has that kind of been a blessing, that it's given the two of you a lot longer to kind of refine the book into the version you ultimately wanted?
I think that, Taboo It didn't last very long, and that was because, not because necessarily of just of Lost Girls, but a lot of the other people, it took them a long time to do the work as well.
Right, yeah.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, if we'd known back then that it was going to take us 16 years or whatever it took us, I like to think that we'd still have gone for it, because it was such a good idea, and we wanted to be the first people to do it. And so, and in a way, it's turned out very well, the fact that it has taken 16 years, because eerily enough, if we'd left it any longer, or if we'd finished it a little earlier, if we'd finished it a little earlier, there would not yet have been the reproduction techniques that would have been capable of reproducing Melinda's artwork with the kind of fidelity that we see in the top shelf volume. If we'd left it any longer, there would not have been the drums for actually photographing artwork of that size. I mean, hardly any comic artists these days work on Bristol board anymore. They mostly work on computer.
Really?
I mean, I don't think that there are any more Brian Bolland originals. I don't think there have been for about 10 years, other than printouts. I know that Kevin works on board, Kevin O'Neill and Melinda, but it's a rare thing, an increasingly rare thing, and it was very gruelling for Melinda coming down here and bringing the artwork with her for weeks, it seemed like, to get it photographed at a very nice little studio called Orange, where they had still got these old drums where you can actually photograph artwork of that size. But if we hadn't have sort of fallen in that particular niche, it would have been a different story. So it's kind of, and also, if we'd have come out, say, 5-10 years earlier, under a Clinton administration, the world would not have been at peace, but it would have been relatively peaceful.
Yeah.
And the fact that we are emerging in the middle, well, charitably the middle, probably at the beginning of this Iraq bloodbath, the fact that that is happening, it makes the real stuff that Lost Girls is actually about a lot more important, a lot more pointed. I mean, like, because Lost Girls is very much pro the human sexual imagination, and it's also got a fairly heavy anti-war subtext. I mean, it is very much, as are me and Melinda, we're products of the 1960s, and I mean, I remember, well, that was it. We said if we just bought ourselves a badge making machine 16 years ago, we could have saved ourselves a lot of trouble. You know?